In this video, I want to start off by discussing probably the most significant composer of the classical period, if not of all of music history, that being Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He could play most instruments at an early age, mostly the keyboard, and he toured Europe from the ages of 6 to 18. People were really fascinated with his abilities at such a young age there. So he didn't exactly live the most normal of childhoods, but he would tour throughout Europe. Got to see almost all of Europe there with his father Leopold Mozart, who was an accomplished composer, and his sister Nannerl, who was also showed lots of promise of a young musician at an early age. They would go around Europe entertaining aristocrats, bishops, and even the Pope during his lifetime. And not just performing, but he would also improvise on the spot. And a lot of times we think about improvisation not being associated with classical music. Well, of course, it wasn't classical music during his time. It was the music of the time. And he didn't just write music, or excuse me, perform music that was just on the written page. He could spontaneously generate melodies and pieces on the spot that would bring audiences to their feet and really admire him for that ability. And he would even perform his own compositions. He wrote his own music as well. Some of his earliest accomplishments, he wrote his first symphony at the age of 8 years old. We talked earlier about how the symphony is kind of thought of as the peak of a composer's accomplishments, and he composed his very first one of many symphonies at the age of 8 years old. He wrote his first oratorio at age 11, his first opera at the age of 12, and I think even his first piano piece. I guess it was discovered that he wrote his first piano piece around the age of, I believe it was 3 or 4 years old, where he would actually write some notes in the margin of the music books that his sister Nannerl was working on. So he was cute, but also this one could think of him as this kind of freak of nature. How could such a young child show such musical promise at such a young age there? And when the novelty of his childhood abilities and that cute image wore off, the adult years were not as kind to him, and people weren't as fascinated with his childhood abilities when you reach the age of 18, as happens with a lot of childhood stars even to this day. So, of course, he had to find some way of making a living. His father was already employed by the Archbishop of Salzburg, and Mozart didn't take too kindly to the role of being a musical servant for someone such as the Archbishop of Salzburg, not like the way that Joseph Haydn was a loyal servant there. So he actually went on to Vienna to try to become a very successful freelance musician, and he did have some success earlier in his career, particularly his operas, piano concertos, and symphonies were very well liked by audiences when he first arrived in Vienna. But again, the audience can turn on a musician very quickly, and they always look on to the next big thing there. And also helped that didn't help that he had issues with alcohol and not being a very good money manager. He had a lot of debts, and also this fickle audience pretty much spelled the demise of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, where he died without any money in his pocket in his 30s. One film that I can highly recommend if you haven't seen already, it's kind of an older film now, but still is probably one of my favorite movies of all time, is this movie entitled Amadeus, taking, of course, the middle name of Mozart's name and using that as the title. It won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for F. Murray Abraham, who did not play Mozart, surprisingly, but is actually the focal point of the movie, and he played the role of Antonio Salieri. Antonio Salieri, who was a contemporary of Mozart, but also a rival composer during Mozart's time in Vienna. And it is a fictional story, but with this historical backdrop of Vienna during Mozart's time, and discusses this fictional relationship between Salieri and Mozart. That they actually did have a relationship, but the premise of the movie in Amadeus was based off of a stage play. And the premise was this rivalry between Salieri and Mozart drives Salieri to the point of plotting to murder Mozart. Again, this is fictional, but it's still a great movie to check out if you haven't done so already, in order to get a feeling of what it was like during Mozart's time in the classical era. Also, I do encourage you to read through all the different web exercises here on Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, here all these different files. If you want to listen to some MIDI files of some of Mozart's works, you can do so, and I do encourage you to listen to some of his works online as well.